हम मोदी से ये कह रहे हैं कि इंशाल्लाह हम आपकी गली चला के रहेंगे, आपके खून से हम आजादी हासिल करेंगे इंशाल्लाह।
Could you talk about the systematic human rights violations that have been going on in Kashmir for decades? And explain exactly what the revocation of these two articles means for the way in which Kashmir will be governed.
But I've been thinking about it obviously the last 4 days, and I increasingly begin to see it as the latest betrayal and a stab in the back in a long series of betrayals going back to 47. Because as we all know, Kashmir was to be sold via a referendum where India and Pakistan were to ask Kashmiris what do they want, and that was not a Kashmiris didn't decide that by themselves. It was a promise made by India's first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru to the people of Kashmir, to the India's Parliament, and at the UN. Subsequently, the referendum promise has never been on it. After 49, Delhi essentially managed Kashmir via client elites, having people friendly to their position in power in Kashmir. Mostly by managing elections locally and not allowing Kashmiri people a true voice in their destiny. Now, when the armed insurgency began in 1989, you have to understand it so, because I don't see this as in isolation. This goes back to everything that the Indian state has done in Kashmir. And to Kashmiris, India has always treated Kashmir as a colony. Why do I say that? Because, when you have 70,000 people dead, killed in the last 30 years, you have about 8,000, 9,000 unmarked and mass graves in the mountains of Kashmir, which haven't seen much investigation or conversation around the world. As soon as 2016, India, considers itself the world's largest democracy, and numerically speaking, it is the world's largest democracy. But Kashmiris see it as the world's cruelest democracy. Why do I say that? In 2016, the Indian state responded to protests on the streets of Kashmir by blinding Kashmiri youth on the streets of Kashmir. What do I mean by blinding? They used a Victorian-era gun called the buckshot gun, which releases a spray of lead pellets in the air to catch, prey in flight. And it caught all these protesters in their eyes. So about, hundreds and hundreds of people were injured in their eyes, out of which about more than 100 have lost vision for life, either partially or completely. So you have to see this latest sort of siege and the revocation in the larger context of what has happened in Kashmir all these years, which is a story, a tragic story, a brutalization of Kashmiri people. And that is that's why I say this move is going to have unimaginable consequences, because Kashmiris will not see this as just a small step by a political party that is undoubtedly pandering to its right-wing majoritarian Hindu base in India by teaching these ungrateful Kashmiris a lesson, by revoking their whatever nominal autonomy they have with the Indian constitution. They see it as yet another stab in the back. It's this latest revocation is a low blow. It packaged with humiliation of Kashmiris, that not only are we not going to ask you, not only are we not going to let you decide your future, we're also going to snatch away the little bit of autonomy that previous regimes had, promised you. So I really, really worry, and I'm really, really worried about what will happen in the next few days or weeks when, Kashmiris sort of make sense of what has been done to them by essentially occupying power. Kashmiris have often always seen their region, their lives being governed by an occupying state from Delhi.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Zaina Khalid. Thank you all for coming. Before we begin tonight's event, Beyond Nationalism, What's Happening in Kashmir, I'm going to be going over our schedule. So first, we will have an introduction. Then we'll move into the history and current situation of Kashmir. moderated questions, how to take action, what's our role, the audience Q&A, and then closing remarks. If you guys have any questions or concerns, we ask that you hold your comments or questions until the audience Q&A. I am Kashmiri. My mother is Kashmiri, and her mother was Kashmiri. My grandmother was one of the thousands of Kashmiris who fled their homes during the violent war that engulfed the Indian subcontinent after the British partition of 1947. A common misconception is that is the point at which the Kashmiris began to struggle. But the Kashmiri struggle for freedom and just rule predates the creation of Pakistan and India. British colonial rule is what set into motion Kashmir's current fight for self-determination. When partition happened, the British gave Kashmir two options: to join Pakistan or to join India. The Hindu Maharaja of a Muslim-majority Kashmir struck a deal with India in order to maintain his control. India offered Kashmir military support and special status if they acceded to India, affirming they would have independence in all matters except foreign affairs, communications, and defense. Prime Minister Nehru made a promise to hold a referendum vote in Kashmir, where the people of Kashmir would define their own fate. However, the region has faced violence and terrorism for decades, and the promise that was made to the Kashmiri people by Nehru was never fulfilled. On August 5th, 2019, a special status outlined in Article 370 of the Indian Constitution was revoked by the Indian government without a democratic vote. The government acted to eliminate Kashmir's rights to its own constitution, limit its decision-making power, and allow non-Kashmiris to buy Kashmiri land with the goal of changing the demographics of Kashmir. When the government told all tourists, foreigners, and Hindu pilgrims to leave Kashmir, they provided no reason. It caused mass panic in Kashmir. The Kashmiris feared for the worst. As communications were blacked out, Kashmir has been isolated and silenced during a violent military takeover. Kashmir has now been occupied for 52 days. Since the first week of the siege, the number of Indian troops in Kashmir has increased by the tens of thousands, even though Kashmir has already been declared the most militarized zone in the world prior to the siege. The people of Kashmir have been subject to violence at the hands of the police and the military. Since the siege, cases of physical violence and enforced disappearances have increased. An 18-year-old named Arsrar was the first casualty caused by pellet guns during the siege. One of the most frequently weapons used against Kashmiri civilians is pellet guns. Furthermore, there are multiple reported cases of Kashmiris being taken by the police and beaten. One such case was a child named Ashik, who was only 12 years old. He was taken while playing cricket with his friends. The officers tied Ashik to a pole and beat him while accusing him of being involved in protests. Ashik insisted that he was only a student. Kashmiri civilians have been beaten with sticks and rods, as well as shocked with electric cables by the police. Along with increased police brutality, the Indian troops have cut off access to hospitals and pharmacies using curfews and roadblocks. Many Kashmiris have run out of their medications that they need to survive and have been denied treatments they require to stay alive. As the state continues to abuse the human rights of Kashmiris, the Indian government insists that the people of Kashmir are fine. If the people of Kashmir are fine, why does the Indian government silence our voices? Why does the Indian government detain the Kashmiris who speak against the occupation? Why does the Indian government threaten the lives of the Kashmiris who take action? While the Kashmiris in Kashmir are not able to speak for themselves, the Kashmiri diaspora have raised our voices for our people in hopes to bring justice to our home. Due to the current actions of the Indian government to silence the people of Kashmir, the greatest act of solidarity that we can all take is listening to Kashmiris. This past Sunday, September 22nd, Prime Minister Modi visited Houston for the Howdy Modi event. President Trump also attended the event, referring to PM Modi as a personal friend of his. Even though Howdy Modi event was marketed as a cultural event to show appreciation for the Indian community, the presence of Prime Minister Modi has grave implications. Today we'll be going in depth on all these issues. Our guest speakers are going to be Muzaffar Hussain, Dr. Wasim Dar, and Bhagwant Singh. I'm now going to give the stage to Muzaffar Hussain and Dr. Wasim Dar to start their presentation.
Peace and greetings to you all. My name is Muzaffar Hussain. I'm born and brought up in Kashmir, spent the majority of my life in Kashmir. So I don't think there would have been a better topic that they could have chosen beyond nationalism. Really, beyond nationalism is humanity. Beyond nationalism is our conscience, which we have seen isn't too much in want in Kashmir. I'm not sure if some of you noticed as they were playing those, running the slideshow of the places in Kashmir, there was a song being played in the background. That song was from Haba Khatun. She was the wife of the last king, Yusuf Shah Chak of Kashmir. And she sang that song, or she actually wrote that poetry after deceitfully, Yusuf Shah Chak was called into Delhi by the Mughal Emperor Akbar and was imprisoned. And later he died in Bihar, and that's where and we still haven't been able to get his remains ever. So it was kind of ironic to hear the song being played in the background. So with that, the intent today is really not to, I'll quickly skim through some of the things, historical background. I'm not a historian. I'm not an expert in Kashmir. I'm just a simple, common Kashmiri. Because my family is impacted, 8 million of people that I relate to in Kashmir are impacted. That is why I think it's an obligation for me, for all of us actually who care about humanity, to talk about this issue. Why is this happening? Why is the democracy, the so-called largest democracy in the world, doing this to a people who it calls its own? And it's been going on for 70 years. We need to ask these questions. So please do excuse me. I've tried my best to get all the historical facts as best as I can, but I'll try to quickly summarize through that, and then we'll kind of give some perspectives from my end. And I also have my fellow Kashmiri, Dr. Wasim Dar, with me. So we'll together be answering your questions and trying to make this night as informative as possible. Again, Kashmir is largest and most militarized zone, divided in 3 parts, some under the Indian occupation, and part of it under the Pakistani administration, and part of it is under the Chinese, controlled by China. Kashmir has both sides of Kashmir, on the both sides of the line of control. The United Nations observers have been there ever since the issue was taken to the United Nations by the Prime Minister of India. A little history, 1846, that's where our troubles began. In fact, it goes a little beyond, as I mentioned earlier, Akbar. So our last indigenous king, Yusuf Shah Chak, that's pretty much when we lost our freedom. That was 1585, 1586. Then it was, you can interrupt later, we have a Q&A, if you could meet, So 1846 is when we basically was a business deal. We had our treaty that was signed with Gulab Singh, and it was a business deal basically. So we were sold, land and people.
Alright, calm down.
In 1931, there was a great Kashmir. You can just see the decency of these individuals who were trying to disrupt their presentation. So we'll continue.
If you don't like it, leave now. Yeah. If you don't like it,
that's a very decent thing to do. If you don't like it, I'm sure. So 1931, the Quit Kashmir movement.
Hello, everyone. We will give you guys a chance to speak if you wait till the end of the presentation for the question and answer portion, as I announced at the beginning of the presentation. Please do so at the end of the presentation so we may finish it on time and you may ask your questions. Thank you. Now Mr. Mahmoud is going to continue his presentation.
Pakistan, both part of freedoms, and Kashmir was left in. I don't think these individuals here, you can tell what the agenda is.
Excuse me. Hey guys. One second.
That's my job, right?
Listen. Brothers, sisters, please. Please, 1 second.
Security is on its way. Security is on its way, ladies and gentlemen. Those of you who are resorting to physical violence and trying to derail the program, security is on its way. I advise everyone please be on their best behavior. Thank you very much.
Brothers and sisters, please, 1 second of your attention, please. Brothers and sisters, I say my brothers and sisters because everyone in this room is my brother and my sister. I say with utmost respect, as a student of U of H, as a human on this earth, please. They're here to give their information, get it across. Inshallah, they said that there will be a Q&A at the end. I respect everyone's opinion. Okay, everyone has a right to it.
It should be out of here.
Nobody's stopping. I'm saying just bear with us. We're all students. We're in this big classroom that we have the benefit of attending. I'm just saying many of us that are around the world, they're not benefiting from this. So let's just take a few minutes of patience, tolerance, sabr, and just guzara kare, please. Just have patience. Because no matter what we look at everything.
You did awesome, that was good.
Pandit, Maulana, Christian, Isai, everyone will tell us, have sabr, have patience, have endurance, tolerance. And then without tolerance, you're not going to be able to get through anything. So please, just give it a couple of minutes. Keep it in your hearts, okay? Keep it in your hearts for now. And then when it's Q&A session, bring on your tongues. Thank you.
Okay, hopefully we'll have some decent behavior now, which is kind of sad, but we're not surprised. As a Kashmiri, I am not surprised at all. Back in Kashmir, when we protest, we get ballots, and when we try to inform the public here, these gentlemen here try to disrupt it, and you can see that violent behavior. So you can just So, of course, you have to disrupt, but we will have to go on. That Kashmiris have lived, Kashmiris have suffered for so many years. 70 years we have suffered the Indian brutality. And your noise and all is not going to disrupt us. So you can do whatever you want. We will continue to inform the people and educate the people.
In fact, since our guests here want to be highlighted, let's have a house light on them. Because I want everybody to know that these are our Holocaust deniers in the crowd.
We have to support them.
Murder others. These are the people. These are the people. Keep the lights on them.
Yeah, come on. Put the light on me, come on.
So in 1947, Maharaja. Okay.
We have more Muslims in India than the whole Middle East. You know that, right?
Excuse me, everybody. Everyone just remain calm. Everyone ignore the people right here. Just listen to me. UHPD security is on its way. The program will be on hold until they are escorted out. For now, just remain patient with us. Do not give them attention. Listen, do not give them attention. Just pay attention to the program. All of us came here for the sake of education, for the sake of learning the cause of Kashmir. Do not react to them. UHPD security is on its way. The program will be on hold until they come. Just remain patient. Remember your intention, and we're here for an educational panel. And once they are escorted out, we'll resume.
You made a mistake. If it was an issue of house time, I didn't know, man. I'm new to this thing. If it was an issue of house time, you have security from the beginning. I'm also for anyone, just in case.
Here's what I
They planned this. They did come. I messed up.
I wouldn't really want them to take it because I'm going to expose their statement.
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling you did awesome.
You're right. It should have been planned.
I didn't know it was this bad. I didn't realize like.
In the meeting, I did say there will be people who come out.
To me, I was. didn't process it. Like, this is really not like a bigger picture of the conflict. What they're saying, how they feel. It's Israel Palestine. It's Israel Palestine where there's very few conflicts in the world that, even if it's like education people can't hold their, like, can't say conflict. That's Israel Palestine. We yell, they yell, like, Israel Palestine. Yeah. But anyway, so it's that level. I didn't realize that. Yeah, anyway, inshallah. That's education. It's education.
It needs to be objective, right? If they're given the chance to speak at the end, they should speak.
Everyone needs to sit. There's too much confusion going on right now.
I mean, I need to kind of, on my page, not my profile. Okay. This is what I'm going to do. Enter.
People are leaving here.
You'll find it. It's good seeing you.
Stand up.
It's 15 people with boys. Hey,
If they put your USB away, what do they want
all
to
right.
do?
I hope people like I'm allowed to be a feature of Muslim community, inshallah. I'm not sure either.
Inshallah.
No, I'm not, right? No, the guy
I mean, honestly, it will happen. They're around, it will happen. These are not our people.
You basically is here again. Everyone should be seated, and we're going to continue the presentation. Once again, if you have any comments or concerns or questions, please hold them till the end, so we can get through to the end of the presentation, and we will stay.
Hey, excuse me. Hey guys. Excuse me.
Omer! That doesn't help, man. Actually,
Excuse me, can I have just everyone can be seated?
you messed up.
Hey, can you guys please
You
be
messed
seated?
up.
Excuse me. Listen, hey guys.
Why would you get involved in
Can
this?
someone tap them on the shoulder?
I saw you, bro. Don't do that. Stay out of it, bro.
Turn around.
Actually, come on. Think.
Pardon me.
There's hundreds of us. Why you should have stayed out of it?
Excuse me, sir. Wait. Can I please request you guys to sit down? Hey,
It's like Palestine, Israel. Right? It's like Palestine, Israel. That's how I understand the world. It's like Palestine, Israel. We can't stay calm either. Like it would be.
hey guys. Direct control.
Okay, everyone, we're going to go ahead and continue with the presentation. If everyone could just focus on the screen, we're going to go ahead and keep going with it. Okay, Dr. Dar and Mr. Hussein are going to start their presentation once again. Can everyone please be seated who would like to witness the presentation? I ask that everyone just pay attention to the presentation so we can get through with it and do what we came here to do, which is educate people on what is happening in Kashmir.
Please take your seat. We're going to start again. We're going to dim the lights. Everyone find your seats.
It's like Israel and Palestine. I get it now. It's like Israel and Palestine. Yeah, live, yeah. Why do I want to see all that?
Move down!
It's my profile on my page. It's on you though. But hey, it doesn't go anywhere. It stays. So we're good.
Everyone, if you support us, if you want to do this presentation, please turn your cameras away from them and onto us so that we can continue the presentation. Dr. Dar will be speaking now.
This is your what's happening in the middle. So let's go to 1947, right? So what happens in 1947? 1931, we know that after Kashmir is sold to Maharaja Hari Singh, Kashmiri people, particularly the Kashmiri Muslims, are decide to act to get their freedom, and many of them are killed. And this is called Black Day, and it's celebrated on October 27th in Kashmir. In 1947, during partition, as was noted by Zaina, the Maharaja decided that he was not going to allow the people of Kashmir to decide their future, and instead acceded to India. And when he acceded to India, he allowed the Indian army to occupy Kashmir and essentially provide protection and security of its border, with the assumption that the Maharaja would continue to be allowed to exercise independence, right? But in this setting, Jawaharlal Nehru had indicated that he would allow Kashmiris to have the right of plebiscite. And this is enshrined into the United States Resolution. So please do remember that it was Nehru who made the statement that Kashmiris should be allowed to decide their future. All right? So, that's 1947. What happened since 1947?
Versus the world. So oppression against
or during 1947, during partition, there are a couple of things, events that happened. One is that Kashmiris fled to Pakistan, actually 200,000 of them, well documented, 200,000 Kashmiris in Jammu were massacred by the Maharaja and his forces. So remember that also. When we talk about genocide in Kashmir, we are not just talking about genocide from August 5th. We're not talking about genocide since the 1990s. We're talking about genocide that happened in 1947. 200,000 Muslims were massacred, right? Massacred. Historically documented. Massacred as they tried to go across the border. So what happened after that? Well, Kashmiris, indigenous Kashmiris decided they were not going to stand for that, and so they fought back. And in 1948, a war between India and Pakistan occurred over Kashmir. This is when the UN intervened and a ceasefire was declared. The United Nations military observer group was positioned in Kashmir since 1949.
This is 400 years. It hasn't been solved yet. Like Malcolm X in his quotes of the dagger in my neck.
Self-determination.
Yeah, I just mean that Kashmir is talking about that. That's not the only. They're talking about this bigger. That's all I'm saying. I agree.
Now,
example of.
Since 1947, basically, India never really, even though they acceded in the United Nations, they never actually practically acceded to give Kashmiris anything at any time. Why would you have 900,000 troops? Again, a fact, right? Nobody here can dispute that. There are 900,000 military and paramilitary forces from India in Kashmir. What are they there to do? They're not there to help us, grow wheat. They're not there to help us, raise our children. They're there to occupy that land so it does not ever leave their control. And it is also an indication that they are not substantially interested in holding a plebiscite now or forever. So then what happens in the 90s? So in 1987, with the help of the Indian government, a popular party was poised to sweep elections in the state and essentially turn over the established political rule there, which essentially was corrupt, right? And what did the Indian government do? They basically rigged an election such that their particular representatives, their allies would win, when everybody knew that those people had been trailing in the polls. And this enraged the population there, and from the 90s onwards, there was essentially a military struggle in Kashmir. By about 2010 or so, you would say, the Indian government has essentially suppressed that insurgency, but continued to use its oppressive techniques to essentially destroy the population of the will of the people of Kashmir. And what do I mean by that? This is not documented by me. Again, these are facts. I didn't make them up. United Nations, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International. They are not Indians. They are not my friends. They have no vested interest in what I have to say as a Kashmiri. They have documented that 80 to 90,000 Kashmiris have been killed by violence from Indian forces. What else have they documented? They have documented that 8 to 10,000 women have been raped. 8 to 10,000. That may be underestimating. 8 to 10,000 women. They have documented that 10,000 people are missing, and recently, news reports have uncovered mass graves in Kashmir. And those mass graves are for what? Those who are missing. Now, you may say that, oh, I'm making all this up. Each of us knows individuals who were arrested, tortured, murdered, killed, disappeared. We all know them, right? So we don't need somebody to validate that for us. We have no need of somebody telling us that we're wrong, because the facts are in our favor. Now, so where are we now? Now we are at a place in August 5th, right? So since basically the mid-2000s, India has essentially exercised military occupation in the state. Well, what does August 5th mean, right? In August 5th, I'm just going to keep going through this. In August 5th, what does it mean? So we all know what the government of India's philosophy is, right? The BJP endorses the Hindutva ideology of Hindu nationalism. What August 5th says is that India no longer has any, is not making any sort of excuses as to why it's there. It is simply there to establish a settler colonial philosophy in Kashmir, meaning that Kashmiris are essentially an ethnic minority which the government of India does not consider to be in any way citizens, does not consider them to have any sufficient rights, to be respected, and the abrogation of 370 and 35A is the last official step for them to basically enforce their full domination in the state. And what it means for Kashmiris is that they are now at a place where they are literally facing colonization and its ethnic cleansing, right? By removing all of the non-Kashmiri Muslims from the state, by taking out the various pilgrims who visit Kashmir, Hindu pilgrims who visit Kashmir annually, by taking out all of the workers who are from Bihar and other poor states who come to Kashmir for employment, by taking out anybody who could even be considered collateral damage. They have essentially isolated 8 million Kashmiris. And what has been their tool to do that? One, for 45 or greater than 45 days, nobody there has access to the internet. You cannot call. There are no landlines. So communication is limited. And again, I will give you a fact. Neither myself nor Muzaffar has been able to contact our families in Kashmir for those 45 days. What else has happened? There has been no ability to assemble, so people cannot get together, irrespective of what the purpose of that assembly is. So people are unable to meet each other, to exchange news, to know what's going on. Number 3, numerous reports. In fact, I just looked at a report in the Telegraph, which is not an Indian newspaper, the Telegraph, which says that 13,000 Kashmiri youth have been arrested. For what reason? For what reason have those people been arrested? Not because they were doing anything, but because they're young people who could potentially pose a problem to the Indian occupation there. And so they have been arrested and they have been tortured. How about military, how about medical services, right? So this was a question that was going to come up. Medical services. In a report in the British Medical Journal, the British Medical Journal, which is not an Indian medical journal, it's not a Kashmiri medical journal, in a report provided by a Hindu from Madhya Pradesh, who is a public health official, he said that people in Kashmir were unable to access medical care. They could not get ambulances to go to the hospital. There were no medicines for people, and they were running short of things like chemotherapy. People could not get to dialysis. They could not get to dialysis. In fact, a Kashmiri urologist named Umar Salim was arrested on video when he complained, or when he stated that he could not give his patients chemotherapy and he didn't know what was going to happen in the face of essentially a 24-hour curfew and an inability of people to buy food or to get goods and services, right? He was arrested, and only through the vigilance of people outside was he able to go ahead. What does this fundamentally mean? This fundamentally means that the government of Narendra Modi, that the BJP, that its supporters, that those who are vested in seeing the Kashmiri people oppressed, have taken the final steps toward that goal. And that's what makes the situation so urgent and so important for us to address, right? That's why 20,000 people were protesting outside of NRG last Sunday, right? You know, right? That's why we protest. Because 8 million people are being denied their human rights. 8 million people are living in a virtual prison. 8 million people are living in a virtual concentration camp. And all of that is documented in the press, right? It's not documented by me. I didn't make it up in a blog, all right? You know, you can find it in the New York Times, in the Washington Post, in the Daily Telegraph, in the Independent, in the Guardian, and you can see videos after the decision of August 5th, when abrogation of Article 370A, or 370 and 35A were made. You can go and find well-documented video clips of BJP supporters dancing and being happy, and comments about how finally Hindu men could go to Kashmir and marry white Muslim Kashmiri women. What does that tell you? That tells you that this is about occupation, it's about ethnic cleansing. All right? No. All right. So, all right. Okay. So, I'm going to show you visual documentation. Okay. Keep going.
Before we continue, I'd like to give a content warning. The following slides will contain graphic images of violence that was committed against Kashmiri civilians.
Okay, so we talked about the tools, we talked about the reasons, right? So what are the tools that Indian military and paramilitary forces use to suppress Kashmiris? Beyond the mental tools of curfew, beyond blackout, well, they use physical violence, right? So what is one of the primary tools of physical violence? As was mentioned, pellet guns. What are pellet guns? They are, okay, all right.
We're going to just take a few minutes to get things settled, and then we'll continue, okay?
Zena. You're doing awesome, Zena. You're doing great. I'm gonna set this up right there. No. I'm gonna set it back there. Listen, you got this real quick. You got this. Listen, you got this. If our audience
members, we got one message for everybody. If you can hear me, I just want you to listen and focus and pay attention to what I'm about to say. This event here today was hosted with the intention to make sure that the Kashmiri cause and the ongoing crisis is being talked about and discussed. So audience members on both sides, please remain silent. Keep your actions to yourself. Do not provoke. Do not react.
Hey! Everybody talking at one time ain't gonna get you nowhere. Listen to him, or the event is about to be shut down. Listen to him.
So I'm going to repeat myself. This event was organized to make sure that Kashmir and its ongoing political, its history, its politics, and ongoing human rights crisis is discussed and educated about. All of us here, we come from different backgrounds, we come from different countries, we have a view of the world and reality of what we see that is ongoing, and that is okay, because we promote diversity of thought, and that is what university is all about, and everyone here has their own opinion to it. With that in mind, each and every single one of us in the audience is responsible for their own actions. So if someone is saying something in the audience, if someone is chanting, if someone is doing something, you have the responsibility to not react. Because if you react to them, it's going to provoke them, it's going to continue to make them angry. You don't want to do that. We're here, we're trying to put on a program. The program should not last more than 1 to 1.5 hours. All of us here want to understand what the cause is about. We're not here to make a show. We're not here to report everybody. We're not here to, put this, make this a whole scene. This is not what we're here for. We're here to understand the cause. Once we're educated, you can go back with a completely different understanding of what came out of this presentation, and that's okay. But what each and every single one of us needs to do is just listen, focus, do not react, be responsible for your own actions, and then we're going to go home, and each and every single one of us will have a different mindset and view and understanding and opinion, and you're valid to that. Go take that to Twitter, go take that to Facebook, not over here. So, no, we're going to continue the program. We're going to continue the program, and regardless of whatever happens, do not react, do not speak, just stay tuned to the program, because that's what we organized this event for. We didn't organize this event to make this go on till midnight and everyone's going to report each other and we're all going to get into a fight and we're all here for hype. That's not what it's about. Once you're educated about this issue, then you can talk to the organizers, figure out what you want to do after this. But right now, in the moment, in reality, just stay tuned, listen to the speakers. These speakers came and have been preparing since the beginning of this event, since the invasion in August 5th, right? And so be respectful to the speaker, be respectful to the organizers, be respectful to the volunteers, to your fellow audience members, because that's what we need right now, and it's not going to help if any of us keep on provoking each other. If you understood what I said and you abide by those rules, just silently raise your hand. Okay. Thank you very much. We'll resume our program.
Okay. So, thank you. I think that's what we said the behavior demands. And we are in an institution of learning, at least common decency and that really demands the environment where one quick thing, my fellow Dr. Dar, as we were talking about this earlier, there was one thing I kind of wanted to point out. 1996, Jimmy Kandarbi, he was an attorney and a human rights activist. He was arrested and Major Avtar Singh, and I'm sure someone will know why I'm mentioning this guy. He along with some of his cronies actually arrested him, and he was taken to custody. His family was told he's alive and he'll come back soon home. I think 19 days later they found his mutilated body. And the reason I'm bringing this up is, how justice sometimes comes back. Major Avtar Singh was given, despite the family, the brother of Jalil Andawi, lodging a complaint, getting a court order for his arrest because there was compelling evidence. Yet, the government of India gave him papers so he was able to immigrate to the United States or Canada. Eventually he made it in the United States, and he made it in Los Angeles. 2010, I think that's 2010 or 2012, Major Avtar Singh shoots himself and kills his wife and kills his 2 children. That's justice. That's God's justice. It doesn't matter. Whatever religion, whatever persuasion, whatever political connections, whatever, doesn't matter. Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, whatever you are, Christian, justice will be done at the end because there is a creator. So I just thought I would quickly pass over that why this, So this is another compelling picture, photograph I want to show you. We want freedom. You can see the Indian security guy is watching, and these birds right in the middle, the pigeons. I even can imagine where this picture was taken. Probably in the old downtown in the Jama Masjid area of Kashmir, Srinagar, the capital of Kashmir. These pigeons really are, that's how they are fluttering, looking for, fighting for azadi, fighting for right to self-determination. So the goal is the freedom, and India can do nothing about it. So these are some of the features of the protest, because not a lot of times you get the narrative. It's few people here, brainwashed by this country or that country or whatever country. It's really at the heart is injustice. When there is injustice, people will rise. As I said earlier, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what religion you are. Justice has to be prevailed. Truth has to prevail. And you can see, these pictures are actually 2016 from right after Burhanwani, the local leader was killed, and people protested. And you can see the images I'm going to show you is exactly what's happening right now, but just because we don't have access to any information. Because we hear that right now, whatever protests happen, they are met with pellets. And nowhere in India do they use pellet guns, except in Kashmir. Something people need to think about. Why? If the government of India is saying that Kashmir is just like any other state, then the methods used for quelling a protest should be similar. So that's not the case. So look at all these pictures again. As I'm warning you, the pictures can be quite graphic. These are all children. Look at that. Used for hunting animals, birds. But in Kashmir, it's a different story. In Shamusha, she was 12 years old when she was fired pellet guns. See her, she can't see anymore. She's totally blind. That's the X-ray of her skull. And this is just one example. There are hundreds of such. These are kids. And when Mahbooba Mufti, she was the chief minister, who is now in jail or under house arrest, when she was asked about these injuries, she said, well, had these kids gone to get chocolate? That was her response. So think about it. These children, and Isha was in her home. These children were in their homes. Do they look like stone peppers to you all?
Yes, we have seen a lot of videos like that too.
So this is again Kashmir. These are children. This is the hospital in Kashmir. This is a school teacher. He was tortured and he was killed. This lady, she was killed by the Indian security forces. This is an ambulance being attacked by the Indian forces. You can see that. This is another example of Indian democracy here. This is Farooq Dar. He actually voted in the Panchayat elections. Just a few days back, he voted for Mahbooba Mufti's party. And what Major Gogi did, he tied him to the bonnet of the Jeep and roamed him around and put this piece of paper. You can see that. And he got a commendation award from the chief of the army staff of India. So you can see that's the face of Indian democracy you don't really see. And these are some of the tactics they use. Those pictures are old, but this method hasn't changed. These pictures are old, but even now I can see that exactly the same procedure is being repeated. PSA, the Armed Forces Special Immunity, you cannot question. Hundreds have been thousands of mass graves. 10,000 children or youth have disappeared. Still don't know where they are. And the other thing that they do is that they demand heavy ransom. And this has just been documented with there was a 5-member events documented this from talking to the local people there. And they have said that they demand ransom. And we have seen that. We have lived through that. I don't need to hear anybody's story or yelling on that because I know I have seen it. I have seen it with my own eyes. I'm an example of that. This is a Jama Masjid, probably 100 years old before America was even discovered. That's the Jama Masjid. There was no Eid prayer this time, and it's happened many times before. The Friday prayers were not offered, but this time even Eid prayer wasn't offered there, and that was closed. That is the side of that's the development Prime Minister Modi has promised the people of Kashmir. And this is another compelling picture. You might think that even after all of this, 90,000 deaths, so many rapes, so many mass graves, so many disappearances, the spirit of the people of Kashmir would have died. You can see that here. Go India, go back. So I think that ends our presentation.
Okay, everyone. The next portion is moderated questions. So we have set questions right now that we're going to get through to give more information on the topic. We're first going to have these guys answer some questions about personal experiences. And after the moderated question portion, again, I will let you guys know when the audience Q&A is. So, for now, we're going to get into personal experiences. Okay, Mr. Hussain, during your recent visit to Kashmir, you were able to see firsthand what the current situation is. The Indian government is saying that all is well in Kashmir. Based on what you saw while you were in Kashmir for 10 days under the siege, what do you think of that statement?
Well, so we had a vacation right before when it started. So we started having this information campaign. So the government agencies were telling people to store supplies, to get their gas and what have you, and baby food. And on the other hand, the government was saying, these are all rumors, don't pay attention. So there was so much deliberate chaos and confusion created among the people that it was mind-blowing. People didn't know what to do. And it didn't feel, I mean, I'm visiting home, you visit home, you have to breathe. And I give an example, where one day we thought maybe we'll go for a picnic, and the guy the bus driver tells me, you have to leave by 4 in the morning. I said, why? It doesn't take more than an hour to reach, an hour and a half. It's a place called Coconut. So they said no, because the roads are completely blocked from 3 to 4, because there's a yatra going on, and for that purpose. And of course, totally understand the religious sentiments, but this is my home. I couldn't move. I couldn't leave at a time when I wanted to leave. So in fact, he ended up canceling. So it didn't feel, I met a young man. He used to be my neighbor. He was incarcerated for 24 years, and 2 other people with him. And eventually the court in Rajasthan eventually acquitted him because there was no evidence against him. For 24 years I saw him. But you could see that his spirit would have died. No, it wasn't. But he was asking my life, for 24 years of my life. It was, being home this time in this all the whole confusion that was created. It was. I've lived through there in the 90s, but this time it felt very different. And every Kashmiri who felt that Article 370 and what it took away, I mean, it doesn't really change the ground situation. The security forces will do what they have been doing all these years, right? That's not going to change. But it's just a statement made by the Indian government, the RSS in the government, telling people, you know what, we're here. We're going to tell you, we're going to put you back. The Muslims. It was coming from that standpoint we're looking at it. So it was terrible.
Okay, so now, what was your experience in Kashmir during the years 1989 and 1991?
Well, I don't know what to say. It was fear. I still remember those crackdowns. I don't know how many of you have seen the movie Haider. I would recommend you watch it. You might get a good sense of how it was. So it's a good movie too, but I didn't watch it until maybe 2 or 3 years ago after it had been released, because when I saw it, every single moment came back. Especially that scene where they show there's a crackdown at early in the morning, it's winter night, and how they get people out. That was a story. And people would be rounded up, you would be taken regardless whether you had done anything or hadn't, it didn't matter. And you would be rounded up, you would be taken, and then you'd be tortured, and sometimes people wouldn't hear. That's why you have these 10,000 mass graves or 10,000 disappearances. We don't know. So it was, that's what life was. You would go to college or school, you would be taken down the bus, and you would be put in front of this armed vehicle, which would have, which normally would host informers, and they would identify the militants, and then depending on how your luck was that day, you would be whisked away and not heard back again. So it was studying that this time, going to college in those circumstances, it was not easy.
Okay, and Dr. Dar, as a doctor, can you shed light on the medical crisis that the people of Kashmir are facing?
So I'm going to basically reference a number of articles because I'm sure that I will be told that these are all lies, but they're not. So on August 19th, an 18-member group composed of a public health official from Madhya Pradesh, who was a Hindu, went to Kashmir and documented the following. They documented that people were unable to get access to hospitals because they did not get on ambulances. There was no transportation. Number one. Articles in the British Medical Journal, and there's a accompanying editorial from The Lancet. So for anybody who's interested, please look those up in PubMed. They're there. Number two, that there was a critical shortage of medicines and supplies that people were not able to access, right? So that means people can't get to the hospital, and there's no medicine there when they get there. Okay. Number three, that people were unable to not only access medicines, access transportation, but that they were being intimidated once they got to the hospital. So people who had injuries from military or paramilitary forces were being told that they could not report them, or doctors were not allowed to report that for fear of reprisals from those forces, and or fear that the Indian Army would basically arrest those persons who were trying to report it, right? So you have three components: no access, no medicine, and then even if you get to the place where you need care, you're told you can't get care because the people who are supposed to deliver care are basically under the threat of violence, and the people who are sick are under the threat of violence. So you can imagine that that situation is ripe for disaster. And as an example, many reports were that people who could not get care and died at home were subsequently buried in their front yards, right? So they were buried in their kitchen garden. And finally, I will recommend to you, again, available a video clip of a doctor named Umar Salim, who was a urologist, who was being interviewed, and during the course of this interview, when he was saying, I don't have medicines for my patients who have cancer, I don't know how people are going to get dialysis, he was arrested on camera. There's video documentation. I don't have to make this up. It's there. Video documentation. He fortunately was released, but that was because of efforts of many people in the United States to essentially illustrate this cause. So the medical situation in Kashmir is dire and critical, and it is 100% the function of the actions of the Indian government.
Okay, for our next slide, we're going to have Bhagwan Singh presenting a bit about Hindu nationalism.
Good evening, everyone. Before I begin, I'd like to thank all of you guys for coming out tonight, being open-minded to come out and hear our speakers speak today, and give them the opportunity to educate. My name is Bhagwan Singh, and in recent weeks, I've had the opportunity to work closely with Sikhs for Justice on the Go Back Modi rally. So now, on behalf of the Sikh community, I would like to say that we stand with Kashmir and are willing to do what it takes to ensure that their rights are not violated. Based on the fundamentals. Based on the fundamentals of Sikhi, we believe that it is our duty to stand with those who are the victims of oppression. Our community stands with great solitude alongside our Kashmiri brothers and sisters, and not only is our duty to serve, but because we understand what this government is doing, as we were victims to a similar organized crime in 1984. When I refer to 1984, I'm talking about the Sikh genocide organized by the government. So these atrocities are purely inspired by Hindutva. The term Hindutva was coined by V.D. Savarkar, who developed the philosophy of Hindu nationalism, which later inspired the establishment of a clandestine group called RSS. RSS stands for Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Sangh, which roughly translates to the RSS. These pieces, along with many others, like the Manusmriti, form as a way of introducing nationalistic and casteist sentiments into policy. The RSS has been able to remain clandestine for many years and integrate its members into the political side of society, as well as within the communities across the country. A prime example of its political integration is the BJP. The BJP is an official political medium of the RSS and have been put in power to set nationalistic policies. Since the landslide win by the BJP, RSS has been brought into the public's view on a grand scale. This allowed them to reach out to people through new means like media outlets which seem to be heavily biased towards the right-wing group, with the exception to a few like NDTV, The Quint, The Wire, and some others. Since their strong emergence in the public view and parliament, there has been massive spike in violence in the name of Hindutva. The victims of these crimes are most often either of minority or a member of lower caste. The RSS divides their targets into two categories. First, those of foreign origin. They state that these are your Muslims and Christians, just for example. And those who originate in India but are distinctly different. Sikhs, Buddh, Adivasi, and many of the other minority groups. For each category, they have specific means of addressing them. For those of foreign origin, they are either to leave or assimilate. And for those of Indian origin, are expected to leave their culture-specific differences and assimilate to the Hindu religion. Under the BJP's government, Kashmir has been invaded by the military. Many have been killed or shot, and even more stripped of their citizenry rights. This is simply an electoral tactic they are using to convince their supporters that they are fighting Muslim extremists in Pakistan.
Wasn't there a 6-month prime minister for 10 years?
Kashmir is being occupied to distract the people of India from their internal issues, most notably the economy, and present themselves as taking a strong stance against Pakistan. They are doing this at the cost of many people's life and liberty while accomplishing their RSS agenda. It is important to remember that BJP is RSS. They are hand in hand together. Whatever the RSS represents, it is BJP's job to put policy. And we, as a minority and people who stand for human rights, will not let this stand. And so once again, I'd like to reiterate that on behalf of the Sikh community, we are standing with our Kashmiri brothers and sisters to stand for human rights.
So the basic concept here is that both the Hindu nationalist government, the BJP, and the Zionist government of Palestine are both essentially working towards settler colonialism. So what are the principles of settler colonialism? One, that you are occupying the land, and in occupying that land, you are trying to eliminate the indigenous peoples of that place, right? So Palestinians and Kashmiris, people in Assam, etc. Sikhs in Punjab. Number two, that colonial project is not about the sort of British colonial project about white man's burden, about uplifting people. It is about creating an ethnic hierarchy of identity, right? So the only person who has rights, or the highest level of rights in Israel, is the Jew, right? And the only person who has rights in the Indian nationalist philosophy is the Hindu, right? So everybody who is not a Hindu is a lesser person. The third part of this is that the purpose of settler colonialism is to continue the propagation of settler colonialism. It is not to somehow get away from the settler colonial project. So what are the historic connections? The historic connections are that many leaders of the RSS and the founders of the BJP movement were admirers of the Zionist appeal, right? That you could basically occupy a land and basically, please, let's focus up here. Occupy a land and historically, two people, Vinayak Sarwakar, who said that, who was an RSS founder, who said if the Zionist dreams are ever realized, if Palestine becomes a Jewish state, it will gladden us almost as much as our Jewish friends. And then Mother Golokar, who basically was a leader in the RSS, said the Jews had maintained their race, religion, culture, and language. All they needed was their natural territory to complete their nationality. So basically, they are all gearing toward ethnic democracy. And then what's the current relationship? Well, that's obvious, right? Bibi Netanyahu and Modi have had many exchanges, both in India and in Palestine, and they have praised each other's tactics. The Indian military and paramilitary forces are known to work with Israeli troops to learn techniques in occupation that they share both in Palestine and in Kashmir, and the Hindu-American Foundation and AIPAC both work closely as lobbies together to teach each other how to influence politics and essentially promote their issues. So the intersection is broad, it is deep, it is philosophical, it is historic.
For the next slide, we're going to be focusing on global impact. There are currently global protests in support of Kashmiri people. One even occurred here in Houston upon the arrival of Prime Minister Modi. Before we discuss the global protests, can you tell us what the protests are happening within Kashmir itself, as well as how the Indian government is dealing with these protests?
So, protests in Kashmir, you just saw the slides earlier. So anytime, and this goes way back, even before 1987, when the elections were rigged, actually in 1988, when government of India somehow felt that if the Muslim United Front won the elections, that next day they were going to, declare Azadi or something. So it goes even before that. So anytime any Kashmiris have tried to protest in a peaceful manner, they've been always met with brutal force. And in fact, it was also Preacher Dambar, I think he also, he didn't specify the name or he didn't disclose the name of the sword, but he said, that's our state policy, use force no matter what. So right from there's one thing that's consistent as far as India's policy in Kashmir is use force all the time, regardless. And as I said earlier, in other places like Jharkhand, or there was a Kaveri dispute, they used water cannons and millions of crores of rupees of property was destroyed. But there is no evidence that even a single pellet was fired. But in Kashmir, anytime there is a protest, there are pellets fired. So it is not really, even you just saw it here. We were just having a decent conversation where we were going to educate and expect other people to listen to us. And you saw the reaction. And just multiply that by when you have a gun-trotting army or a security guy, you can imagine his reaction. So we've lived through that. We have seen that. And I relate experience from a very close, and this was not a protest, an incident of a militants between the militants and the army had occurred. And this is one from my family, from my mother's side. He was a bank manager. So he let the other people go, and he told them I was going to close the bank and he was going to leave. And he left the bank branch for the front door. There was a military bunker right opposite the bank. One bullet was fired in his heart. And at that time, his son was, I think, maybe a year and a half old. And now, a few years ago, I saw him as a handsome young man. So every time, and if people protest that, you're met with force. And there are many good people who have come from India. And recently, some of you can Google it. There's a report, Kashmir Cage. They've captured it very well. And they've captured there's another commission of 5, I think from Press Club of India. They went, 5 women, they went to Kashmir to see the situation. And Ghulam Nabi Azad, Rahul Gandhi, that's the kind of those people. I mean, you don't let your own people go and see the situation. What is there to hide? You're not even the very people who got BJP into power. They are now under arrest. So if you're accusing them of something bad, they were bad even then. So they were bad now. So to your question, the protests, how they are, I can tell you it's always brutal. It's always brutal. And those pellet guns, almost, I think in 260 there was a record of 700 or 800 young men and women, children basically, were blinded. And thousands were injured. And let us see where that evidence is anywhere else in India, anywhere else in any civilized world, and then I talk about India. So that's the response we get.
Okay, so next I'm going to invite Umar Abdullah onto the stage to speak about how we can take action to support Kashmiris in their struggle for freedom.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi.
Peace be upon all of you here, whether you are Muslim, Hindu, Sikh, atheist, Christian, whatever it may be, peace be upon all of you. And I will begin by asking that Almighty God shower His blessings upon all of us gathered here today. And I'll also begin by asking God Almighty to send His blessings and peace upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad. Peace be upon him and all the prophets of God who came before him. My name is Amar Abdullah. I'm here today representing ICNA, Islamic Circle of North America, and its division called the Council for Social Justice. ICNA Council for Social Justice. Before I begin, I know that we have been battering the nation of India. Okay. So we've been battering India as a nation, but one thing that I want to mention is that you have to give credit where it's due. India is one of the most educated nations on earth. It's got 1.2 billion people and is one of the most educated nations on earth. So you have to give that credit where it's due. But if we look back and we see where that vision came from, it was not from the likes of BJP and RSS, and it was not from the likes of Mr. Modi building dysfunctional toilets in the country, and Mr. Bill Gates giving him an award. It was from the likes of Gandhiji, it was from the likes of Nehru, and it was from the likes of Abul Kalam Azad. And if you look in the history, Abul Kalam Azad, who to this day was a Muslim figure who to this day is celebrated in India as one of the key figures of the Free India movement and fighting the British control over India. And his vision was the one that laid the foundation for what India would become today. A nation of the most educated people on earth, people who speak multiple languages, people who hold master's degrees and PhD degrees, people who are becoming a developed nation over time through the power of their education. And it was a Muslim minister, education minister, Abu Kalam Azad, who started that initiative. Now the reason I start with this preamble is because you have to, again, give credit where it's due. India is, without a doubt, one of the most educated nations on earth, and there are Indian expatriates all over the world, including right here in the United States of America. And the reason I mention this is because you, as activists for truth and justice in Kashmir, are going to face opposition from people who support India and the Indian government and the current Indian administration of the BJP. You will find opposition. Whether you go into any field, whether it's in medicine, whether it's in law, whether it's in IT, you will find yourself being attacked on all sides, as you are here today, by opposition who support Modi, who support the atrocities in Kashmir, who support the atrocities that the BJP and RSS have done all over India. So have the courage and have the conviction. So let's tell ourselves that we will have the courage to stand up and we won't be bullied. And the reason that I mention this is that because we have to form what I would like to call a critical mass. And that begins right here with the people in this room. Now raise your hand last week if you were at the NRG Stadium or near the NRG Stadium in the protest against Modi and the protest against his visit to the United States of America. Right? So several of us here were, but do we think that we lost our voices? We were hot, we were tired, we were sweaty, we were thirsty. It was a long day. But that was just the very beginning of this fight. This fight starts from this very day forward, and it continues to go forward until we may not even see the fruits of our labor. We may not even see the fruits of our labor. So what we would like to start off by saying is that everybody here, you are the champion for Kashmir. You are a champion for rights and justice in Kashmir in all parts of the world. And the way you start by doing that is by forming that critical mass here at the University of Houston. I'd like to ask I'd like to please ask I'd like to excuse myself and ask for forgiveness from my audience members here who are not Muslim, but I will recite a little bit of the scripture from the Quran. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين بالقسط. Oh, you who believe, be champions and stand up for justice. This is a command for us as Muslims. So the Muslim student who is here, recognize this, and those of you who are not Muslim, recognize that this statement in the Quran was recognized by Harvard University as one of the most powerful expressions of justice in all of history. So let's recognize this and let's be champions for justice. Now I want to come to a student level. Who here writes at all? Anybody here can write? All right, the ones who here can write, I want you to give them a round of applause. Everybody here who can write. And everybody here who can't write, I want you to make sure that you learn how to write. We have a newspaper here on campus. It's called the Daily Cougar, right? All right, I came from LSU. I graduated from LSU, so I don't know much about University of Houston, but I know that it is an exemplary college, and the exemplary students who are here, and it has an exemplary newspaper called the Daily Cougar. So those of you who are here, make sure that you begin writing in the Daily Cougar from this day forward, okay? Make sure that you start writing, because whatever activism we can do, whatever action points I can outline for you, you have to start by acting locally and then thinking globally. So the information that we learned here today from our presenters and from our speakers about the detailed history of Kashmir and the detailed history of the RSS and the ideology and the dangers of Hindutva, you learned about that here today. So now start putting pen to paper and start educating the people who are around you. I want to give a parallel. In the 1960s, there was a youth organization that became very well known. It was called the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, also known as SNCC. It was started in the
So we're a little bit short on time. With a few of our slides, we are going to move on to the audience Q&A portion. For this portion, while people may have questions, you'll be given about 30 seconds to ask your question, and the mic should be held by our staff members' hands. Okay?
I need to ask a question.
Yes, if you have a question, the mic will come to you and you'll have 30 seconds and the staff member will come to you. Everyone who has a question,
because they put a lot of work into this.
For
Give them
sure.
a big round of applause. ICNA Council for Social Justice, ICNACSJ.org. Make sure you go on their website, you get the listing points, talking points about Kashmir, you get the information, the infographics, you get everything you need, and then you start taking action. You start writing to your representatives, your senators, and you start taking action. Additionally, there's another organization called Sound Vision. Outside there, distributing information, flyers, packages, posters, etc. for whatever information you need. I don't want anybody here leaving today without knowing what they're going to say about Kashmir and who they're going to say it to. Thank you very much.